Welcome to Writers Not Writing. This used to be a show where I interviewed authors about the ways they procrastinated, and I'm sure we'll still have some of that. But in these times, I want to use this show to highlight artists who are using their voices to push back against fascism. Whether we're writing or not writing, we need to be defending one another. I'm Benjamin Gorman, your friendly author in exile, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug the producer, who hitched a ride in my suitcase. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff, and Doug does his best to make me sound better. Welcome to Writers Not Writing. You're going to enjoy today's show. And if you want a little more, become a patron of my Patreon, help me keep a roof over my head, and you'll get access to an ad-free version of the show with a bonus segment with each interviewee. Okay, here we go. If I take my time. Hail and well met readers and reviewers. Welcome to Writers Not Writing. I am very excited about today's guest. So we have Thorn Coyle, the author of the Midlist Indie Author Mindset and several magic-filled series with diverse casts, including The Seashell Cove, Pride Street Paranormal Cozy Mysteries, The Witches of Portland, The Mouse Thief, and many others. They've written multiple nonfiction books on magic and spiritual practice. Thorn believes that magic is real and justice is worth fighting for. They live in Portland, Oregon, and drinks a lot of tea. So welcome. Very,
Indeed.
very glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I have been so excited to have you because in this era of rising fascism, you've been really speaking out a lot. And that is, I think, so important. And I wanted to have you on to hear for our listeners out there who are folks who are in the reading community. We really want to focus on those folks. What are your ideas about what they can do in this time so that they don't feel overwhelmed and like there's nothing, because there are lots of things we need to do right now.
Well, there are always lots of things we need to do, which is the first thing I need to say, right? Yes, we're in an acute crisis right now, but in many ways, for a lot of people, not much has changed, right?
Yes.
There have been people living under oppression and oppressive governments for centuries. They know how to survive. They know how to adapt. Yes, many of them have been killed, as we know, indigenous people, Black people, queer people. But there's a thread of survival and a thread of thriving and a thread of uplifting each other. And the important thing is community. Too many of us have isolated ourselves. We don't know our neighbors. For some of us, maybe it's not safe to know our neighbors. But for others of us, we need to build those kind of networks so we can do what leftists call mutual aid, right? And mutual aid is not just a leftist concept. It's much older than leftist theory. All traditional and indigenous societies understand this concept, right? I have a skill or a resource. You have this other skill or resource. We don't try to grab each other's skills and resources. Instead, we share, right? We support each other. We uplift each other. And this has been the core of my activism and my political practice for decades. Yes, I've done other things. I've blockaded, I've been arrested, I've, spoken out, done those things. But I always return to community care and mutual aid. And, it's something I learned just over the years because it felt right, but also Reverend Phil Lawson, who was a civil rights activist who just died recently, he's of blessed memory. He and I were working together in Occupy Oakland and with the Interfaith Tent and on other projects. I did a new Jim Crow study group with him. And we were on a retreat once doing an exercise, and the exercise was kind of like, well, where do you start? And I'm like, well, I start with centering myself and doing this, and then I move out. I work outward from myself. And Phil said, no, you always start with community. And I thought, wow, isn't that a cultural reframe, right? As a long-term Black activist, he knew community is the bedrock of everything else.
Yeah.
So, what are we doing to support community? How are we asking for help? How are we offering help? How are we sharing resources? And then, as readers and writers, what's our vision? What is capturing our imagination? Is our imagination only captured right now by the churn of terribleness? Or are we going for a walk and noticing the beautiful things? Are we watching the sunset from our bed?
Yeah.
If that's what we have to do. Are we reading books that and looking at art and listening to music that fills us up with hope and possibility, right? And writers have taught us this for centuries too. The imagination's a powerful thing, and any art feeds the imagination. So right now, yes, I'm taking in information. Yes, I want to be aware of what's going on, but I don't want to get bogged down and tangled in it. I want to also make sure I'm feeding my imagination things that feel healthy and renewing and hopeful.
Yeah.
So that was a long rant.
No, I totally agree, and I think one of the ways that we challenge kind of the doom scrolling is even in our processing of the bad news, as much as possible, do it in community. Get
Yes.
together with people in person and say, "Hey, did you see the news? Let's talk about this. What are we going to do about this?" Rather than I just sit there and take it all in on my own, and even if that's just a single friend or a small group, that building community is so much healthier than just receiving it all individually and just feeling overwhelmed and unable to do anything about it.
Yeah, Fannie Lou Hamer reminds us that we just need three people to start a movement. We need three people to accomplish something. We can all say, okay, who are two people I trust and rely upon? And what's one thing we can do together, right? Can we help some local immigrants? Can we help the unhoused community? Can we start a resource sharing network? Can we tutor kids? Whatever it is, right? It doesn't matter. We all have a part to play.
Absolutely. And that activism that you get involved with then inclines you to be more supportive of other activists. So if you are
Yes.
working to help a houseless person and you've got three friends, and then somebody says, one of those three friends says, somebody reached out to me and they're planning a protest, you've got your core group and you
Yes.
can then get engaged. And so I encourage people, when it comes to kind of traditional political outreach things, see them in a different way. Instead of I'm going to go do this phone bank because we're going to convince some people to change some votes, it's I'm going to go do this phone banking because the 10 people sitting in that room are all going to be together and we're forming this
Right.
community and we believe in this and we're going to make this change.
That's right. I'm a connector in my community. That's one of my main roles. I am like, okay, this person is refurbishing computers and doing redistribution. This person is making sure, elders have air filters. This person is starting a water drive to the res, right? And I say, oh, I know someone with a spare air conditioner. I know people who have money, or I know people who have time, and I put those people together, right? And sometimes people are like, how do you know all these people? And I'm like, I showed up one time years ago. Now I have a network. And now people know they can call on me and say, hey, Thorn, I've got this project. Can you help?
Right.
And I'm like, yes, I can plug in five other people, right? So even though I am no longer, because of my autoimmune disorder and a brain injury, I'm no longer out in the streets much. I'm doing a lot of community organizing in just this really casual, simple fashion. It's not a big deal. And that's the other thing I want to tell people, right? We tend to think in grandiose terms. Scale it back, simplify.
Yeah.
What's the most basic, simple, easy thing you can do? Maybe it's making sure you have water and a protein bar in your backpack and a couple dollars to hand out to someone on the street. Maybe it means keeping blankets in the trunk of your car that you got at a thrift store and handing those out when someone needs it. Maybe it's giving someone a ride. You know, we start where we are.
And for readers,
My mantra is always do what you can, where you can, when you can.
right, right. And for readers, it's read books by authors other than the authors you've always been reading and tell someone. And it's community building. We are
That's
lifting
right.
up other voices right now. And that's going to be really important. If we just keep saying, here is the big bestseller by, middle-aged white guy, we're not pushing out into the community that has the knowledge that we're desperately going to need right now about how
That's
to
right.
survive this. Middle-aged white guys don't know how to survive difficult situations.
Well, right. And especially now when the US government is literally erasing our
Mhm.
history, right? In real time. So we need to look to the history keepers from all walks of life, all cultural experiences, right? And, in publishing, big publishing, we know has a tokenism problem
Oh, yes.
because they also have a hiring problem, right? They don't
Yes.
have, black and trans editors, or maybe they have one. And so they have their one queer book of the season, their
Right.
one Mexican American book of the season, right? So you're correct. As readers, we can say, hey, here's this black trans author who's writing small town romance, and I really love her work. You know,
And put it in
why
somebody
don't you
else's hand. Yeah, absolutely.
check her out? Yeah.
Yeah.
And, also it just enriches our lives
Mhm.
because we're not hearing the same stories over and over again. It expands our consciousness, which then expands our imagination, which then helps us say, well, what kind of world do I want to live in? What
Yeah.
kind of world do I want to build with my three friends?
Yeah. 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 And let that other voice guide your three friends. It doesn't have, if you're doing the reading, you can go, oh, the thing I presumed we needed to do to change the world might not be the thing the world needs. Maybe some other voices can inform me about what we can do. And that's important, to be open to the possibility that the part of the world you're seeing is very small. you know,
Yeah. Yeah. A decade or more ago, I did an online new Jim Crow study group for pagans, right? I'm like, here, you all should be reading this book. I'm going to create a forum where we can read it together. I've already read it, I've already studied it. Let's go through the process, right? Again, it was simple.
yeah.
It didn't take a lot of time or effort. It formed a small community of people who then went into their home communities and shared the information.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's that ripple effect. It can make a huge difference by being real and substantive within the small group rather than, superficial, large but superficial, and doesn't make kind of deep change to people.
Yeah. It's easy for our egos to get caught in if we're not making a massive effort and massive change, it's not enough.
Yeah.
And that's a lie. And it's just not true. And it's not how human society works in general. It starts with the small
Yeah.
stones to build, many stones to form the arch, as the old Union song goes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that I have been, and I think it's important that we start from that idea that the current crisis is a manifestation of something that is, 284 years old. I mean, this is, the
Yes,
American experience is one of oppression for the majority of
yes,
Americans. Uh,
yes,
and so part of what I think might be a distraction from that is this flood the zone strategy we're seeing coming out
yes,
of, let's hit people with 1,000 things and they won't notice the next thing. What are
right.
some things, or a particular thing where you're saying this is a story that people may overlook because they're being flooded by other things?
Gosh, there's so many.
Yeah.
You know, it's it's hard to pick. I mean, so I'm gonna backtrack from that and hope to approach the question in a different way. One thing I've been doing lately is saying to myself, is there anything I personally can do to save the National Institutes for Health today?
Right.
That answer is a big no.
Right.
There are other people doing that work. I am grateful to them, right? So the things that get overlooked are the smaller local things, right? The big picture stuff is happening. And yes, if you're a historian, a researcher, an internet archivist, whatever, you have a part to play right now in making sure, oh, information is literally getting stripped from websites right now. I'm going to archive as much of that as possible in a place that's safe. I'm going to put it on 10 different hard drives. I'm going to print it out and have hard copies. I'm going to make sure that the organizations who've been doing the lore keeping for decades have the support they need, right? So that's one example. But the other example is like right here in Portland, Oregon, our city government is letting through the Zenith train lines carrying, nuclear waste. Again, even though we all said no, we're not letting these trains through. Well, we're
And
distracted, right? And
yes, and
thank
we're assured, don't
goodness,
worry, it won't happen. Okay, you said
don't
no, it's
worry,
not
it
going to
won't
happen.
happen. Well, guess what? It's happening. And thank goodness a small group of activists is out in front of City Hall going, hey, this is unacceptable, right? So it's look for things all the layers down, including locally. The things people often overlook is, are you showing up to your school board meetings? Are you showing up to city council meetings? Right? What's on the agenda and why?
Yeah.
You know, who are they hiring for security? What other places are those security guards protecting? Right? How's the web connected? So the stuff that gets overlooked is often stuff you can do locally.
Yeah. And one thing I will, just a little tip for folks out there who are going to be doing that work, who are going to be going to those meetings. When you get the agenda, they will have a portion in the packet that says consent agenda. And this is something that the board is going to go yay or nay, and then they discuss it in private. Read the consent agenda, because a
Yeah.
lot of the really scary stuff doesn't get talked about unless somebody steps up to the podium and says, I noticed that last month you all agreed to this thing and it's really problematic, and nobody would have known if it didn't get
Yeah.
brought to the light. So a lot of your role is, showing up is just saying, hold on a sec, this needs to be discussed in public.
Yeah. Another thing we can do is if you hold any sort of privilege, whether it's skin privilege, economic privilege, you know, whatever. I mean, I could go through a whole list. Use that as leverage. I've done that. One example is there was a shelter proposed in my neighborhood. We desperately need services like that in our area. We don't have a lot of those services, and people were fighting it. I would show up at the county commissioners' meetings and say, as a homeowner in that neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
and they'd say, oh, yes, you're a homeowner in that neighborhood. And I'd say, yes, and I get off at that bus stop all the time. And they'd go, oh, yes, this upstanding homeowner taxpayer in the community gets off at that bus stop all the time. Then I would say, I 100% support the building of this shelter.
And
Right?
they
They thought I was going to say something
Right.
else.
Right. Well, and they pay a disproportionate attention to the voice that's present. So
Yes.
they're saying, I got emails from 5 angry people, and those people must represent millions. And then you show up and you say, I disagree. I do not, want to scream out this NIMBY rhetoric and, I'm telling you to your face, I want these people to be cared for in my neighborhood. These are my neighbors.
Yes.
And then they're
Yes.
going, oh, now this is the person we're hearing from. I guess we're going to. So, small number of people have a disproportionate impact because if they're willing to speak out,
Yes.
and
Yes.
yes, I totally agree. Privilege is not privilege is moral obligation. Like if
Yes.
you've got to use it to
Yes.
benefit
Yes.
others.
Another simple thing everyone can do, readers, I'm talking to you, get a library card.
Yeah.
Literally support your local library. I use my library all the time. The more people use the library, the stronger the library is. And then we're in that ecosystem. And when the librarians need help, we go, oh, right, the librarians need help now. And I am in community with these librarians by virtue of just having a library card.
Yeah. And your library is more than you thought it was when you were a kid and you went, it's the place where I go and I check out a book. That's wonderful. Please do that. But also, when you want to get together with those three people and you're saying, where shall we meet? How about at the library? And it can
Yes.
become a community space. And that makes that then, the folks at city council go, that library is getting a lot of use. It's an important space
Yes.
for our community.
Yeah. So we use it for our small meetings,
Mhm.
and then it keeps it open for folks who have no place else to go,
Right.
right? Folks who need that computer because they don't have a computer at home, or folks who don't have a home to go to, right? The library has to remain a community resource.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good that's a good that's the kind of advice I want more in the show. It's a it seems like it's small, but it's really big. Just going, hey, let's meet at the library can make a big difference for your library, which then makes a difference for your community. That's excellent advice. Um, so when you are doing some self-care, self-care is legitimate, self-care is important. What are you doing when you step away from it right now to take care of yourself?
Well, I take a walk every day, um, and notice the small, beautiful things. I notice the droplets of rain on the leaves, or, the kid's toy on the sidewalk, or the way the clouds are moving, whatever, right? I have to get out of the house physically and take a walk.
Yeah,
It keeps me in touch with nature. It keeps me in touch with the city I live in, and it keeps me in touch with the part of myself that needs to move and see things, right? So that's one thing. I read a lot. Um, I read, yes, I do research, but I read for escape.
mhm,
I read for pleasure. I read to refill the well. I watch shows. I've been watching comedy shows, especially from non-white people,
mhm.
which is a great way to expand my cultural, understanding, but also it just lightens my heart.
Yeah,
It's good to laugh.
yeah.
I listen to music all the time too. Right. It's all, again, the simple stuff. I do have a daily meditation practice and candle lighting practice that helps me start my day centered, which helps too, right? The last thing I want to do is start my day doom scrolling
Yeah,
and with the onslaught of terror, right?
yeah,
I want to start my day centered, present, with some gratitude.
yeah,
Then I can move out because then I can attend to the work at hand. I can attend to the writing I need to do, the business tasks I need to do, and then whatever mutual aid or community care I need to do.
yeah, yeah. That's something I need to work on. My wife's much better about that. She has a practice in the morning, and she goes through a routine that keeps her from immediately doom scrolling. Whereas I right away am going, okay, I need to get to work, and part of getting to work is checking the email, and oh, this email reminded me to check this newspaper, and oh no, I've fallen into
Yeah,
it within minutes.
yeah. Yeah, and I always say, when I was teaching all the time, I would say to my students, how you start your day sets the template for your whole day. So, what template do you want to set, right? What's your foundation for your day moving forward, which then becomes a foundation for your week, your month, year after year, right? It's easy to just get into habits that don't actually serve us and don't actually increase our health and well-being, and therefore, over time, undermines our ability to care for each other and build community and do all the things we're talking about, right? And the thing I want to say to people is, again, we think grandiose. We think, oh, I don't have half an hour to an hour to 3 hours to do yoga and do practice and make my prayers and do all these other things. Start with 5 minutes.
Yeah,
And if you can't start with 5 minutes, start with 3 breaths,
yeah,
literally. Just sit up in bed or stand up, whatever. Take 3 long breaths, connect with yourself, maybe think a thought of gratitude, then start your day, right? And then you can work up from the 3 breaths to 5 minutes to 10 minutes. If you've got more time, great, do it. But 10 minutes most of us can handle.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, or at least it's a very good foundation, and then it can build from there. Um,
Exactly.
so we're going to go quickly to our commercial break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask you, what have you been daydreaming about lately? Hey, readers and reviewers. I want to put out an all call for guests who are fighting back against fascism. If you know an author or artist of any kind who is using their art or their platform to push back, especially if they are doing so in an interesting way that deserves more attention and support, share this show with them and encourage them to email NotAPipePublishing at NotAPipePublishing@gmail.com, and we'll get them scheduled. And if you're looking for inspiring or practical ways you can push back, be sure to subscribe to the show so you catch all the great guests folks are going to recommend. See you here each week. Want to read a paranormal romance unlike any other? Love horses, monsters, and wry laugh-out-loud humor? Then Sparks is the book for you. Rosie wants to tear down the old cowshed on her ranch, but the old-timers tell her not to because it's unlucky. And boy, howdy is it ever. Rosie's new world is magic. Her boyfriend talks to animals, the demon under the barn is deadly and requires a cow for company. Rosie has to save her ranch, her love, and even her dog as she negotiates an unbelievable magical world. Romance, monsters, and magic for grown-ups? Yes, please. Check out Sparks by Maren Bradley Anderson.
You deserve a vacation.
How about a trip to a dude ranch on a colony planet?
Or a journey to a universe where wizards call lightning down from the sky and calm rumbling volcanoes?
Or a holiday tour of the major cities of Europe with vampires and werewolves and witches as guides.
Or maybe just a nice hot sudsy bath with a book of poetry that will make you cry and sigh and laugh.
We've got you covered.
A paperback will appear on your doorstep each month to whisk you away, and you'll return refreshed, enlightened, and ready to make the world we share a brighter place for everyone.
Or if you prefer, you can sign up for a quarterly subscription and get 4 YA titles, 4 adult titles, or 4 collections of poetry per year.
Plus, you'll get book club questions from the author before you start the book and an interview with the author afterwards.
So, if you are in a book group or want to start one, this is everything you need in a kit. Will we occasionally throw in some extra surprises just to say thank you to our members? Of course.
You can also give someone their very own membership with all of the rights and privileges pertaining thereto.
So, find a reward level that's right for you.
And share this with your friends.
Join the Indulge Your Shelf book club today. Your bookshelves deserve a little pampering. Welcome back, everybody. So I'm here with T. Thorn Coyle. And Thorn, when you've been daydreaming, what have you been daydreaming about lately?
Wow, I've been daydreaming about a lot of things. Mostly, I've been daydreaming about this. It might sound funny, but I'm going to say it anyway. I've been daydreaming about the world I want to live in, right? I've been daydreaming about communities. I've been daydreaming about post-scarcity societies and clean water and clean earth. And I've been daydreaming about, wow, what's my connection to the stars? I'm connected to the stars. I have iron in my blood. Where did that come from? That came from the stars, right? I think about all those sorts of things. And of course I daydream about that because I'm an author.
Right.
All of that filters into my writing. My daydreams become the books I write. I wanted to write a book when I was flat out on the couch with my illness so bad I could barely move. I needed to imagine there was a coven of witches who could use magic and community power to achieve justice for their communities, right? So I wrote those books. I want to write about queer characters having adventures and using communities to solve mystery. So I write those books. As a writer, I am thrilled and honored to be able to use my imagination and my daydreams to actually manifest a book.
Yeah.
Right. Just like people manifest songs, they manifest knitting, they manifest bread, they manifest gardens, right? So if we daydream that everyone is fed, we manifest things like a community garden in an empty lot, or we manifest working at the food bank, right? I love imagination that leads me towards action. And imagination and daydreaming is really an important part of that process. So many of us were taught at some point in our aging process that that was ridiculous and daydreaming is for children,
Right.
right? Daydreaming and imagination are some of our most powerful tools.
Yeah.
And it's why the arts are so important, because they help us hold on to those daydreams and open new daydreams, new portals to imagination, right? And that's how we grow and build what we desire.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm struck by the irony of the fact that we were told daydreaming is for children, and our generation as parents has prevented our children from having the time to do it. Like, if it's for children, then why don't we protect it for children? Turns out we're opposed
Right.
to it for anyone. And it's
Right.
so
So
important.
you're talking about the overscheduling of children and
the not having time to just do nothing, and that was,
yeah.
when I was a child, that was such an important part of the daydreaming was, I'm bored. No, I'm not bored. I can literally stare at a fan and envision,
Yeah.
and our kids don't have that kind of nothing, empty time. They've got 1,000 things to do. And, even when
Yep.
they've got a break, we say, how can you use this break in this productive way? And,
Yep.
changing the mindset to daydreaming is productive. It is part
Yes.
of creation.
Yeah. And, it's part of why I go for a walk every day. It's not just because I work from home and really need to get out of the house, which is also true. And it's not just because my body needs motion. It's time where my brain can just ramble,
Yeah.
The other thing I do besides my daily walks is if I find I'm doing non-productive, that fake productivity
Yeah.
that we like to do.
Yes.
Oh, I'm being productive because I'm checking this and then I'm checking that. And it's like really, I'm spinning my wheels. If I find I'm getting into that, I either say, maybe I need a second walk today, or I say, you know what? I'm going to go take a bath.
Yep.
Sitting in a tub of water is my sign that, nope, I'm actually taking a break now.
Yeah.
And I don't do it. I do it actually maybe once a week, sometimes more. But it's my sign that I need to get out of the loop
Yeah.
of fake productivity, right? So for some people, that's I'm going to go out and dig weeds in the garden. We all have our different ways of doing that.
Yeah,
So I would
gardening was
just,
very much mine when I lived in Oregon. But one of the things
yeah,
that I found here is living in Barcelona, we don't have, cars. And so everything is a walk. Hey, we're going to walk to the grocery store. And it has been a really positive change.
yeah,
And we're lucky in a town this dense, you don't need a car.
right.
The public transportation is good, but we don't even use the metro most of the time. We just walk. And that
Yeah.
walking then forces you to go, oh, I am looking around at the architecture. Oh, I am listening to the people speaking a dozen different languages, things that I would not have noticed had I been driving. And so I
Yes.
encourage people, get out there and walk. It's really good for you.
Yes. Yeah, the more we can immerse ourselves in the world, the better. And I mean the physical world. And I know that that's not possible for everyone,
Yeah.
but find the avenues in which you can connect with the broader world, right? And for some of you, that'll be listening to podcasts or music or using shortwave radio. I don't
Right.
know. I'm thinking of musician Paul Pena, who taught himself Tuvan throat singing via shortwave radio.
Whoa.
You don't know?
I don't know this story. I know what throat singing is, which is
There's a
like I've heard it
brilliant
with,
documentary called Genghis Blues. Paul Pena was a blind black blues musician in San Francisco who connected to the world through shortwave radio, taught himself Tuvan throat singing, got flown to Mongolia to compete and won.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways to connect, and any way we can get ourselves out of our own bubble
Yeah.
and just say, yeah, there's a broad world out there, and there's people I can connect with, real, living, breathing people,
Yeah.
not constructs, not opinions, not shouting on the internet a bunch of vitriol, right? Here's
Yeah.
someone on the street, or here's my neighbor. Like, I know one of my next door neighbors, politically, we are going to fully disagree, right? If we met on the internet, we'd probably be in an argument. Instead, we're sharing ladders,
Right.
we're sharing resources, we're building community together because we have to, because we're neighbors, right?
Yeah, and I think that also goes a long way towards maintaining our hope. If you are just looking at abstractions, it's easier to say there is so much that is causing despair, and the abstractions don't feel solid enough to counterbalance that. But when you
Right.
get out and you're seeing the droplets of water on the leaves, you're saying there is beauty in the world worth fighting for. And when you are seeing
Exactly.
instead of I am defending LGBTQIA plus people, which is this abstraction. No, I
Yes.
am defending my friend Susan, right? It is
Yes.
I am defending, when it comes to immigration, I am defending my neighbors,
Yes.
rather than this individual who I am worried about. It's a very different kind of activism than I'm checking the right boxes, but I think that's a path to despair. Like, you can feel the losses and you don't feel the real gain, what it is you are trying to protect, who you're trying to protect.
Yes. Agreed.
So, where can folks? I have appreciated, and now that I've said, we've talked about meeting in the real world, and I want the readers to know, Thorn and I did meet in the real world.
We did indeed.
We did at the Author Alchemy Summit, which is coming up this weekend. So, thanks to
Yes.
Jesse and all those folks for I mean, Jesse Kwok is doing amazing work building community in right
Exactly.
there in Portland. But really appreciated your activism and just speaking out online. So where can folks follow you and then find your work?
Yeah, thorncoyle.com. And the best way to stay in touch with me is I send out a weekly newsletter with just my musings for the week. It's a short meditation on life, what's happening. And, then I also, will tell you what books are coming out, that sort of thing at the bottom. And then still on really pretty much all social media platforms, Mastodon, Blue Sky, all the meta platforms for now.
Yeah.
But yeah, go to
And
thorncoyle.com
I think
and
I've
then
been
sign up for
following
my
you most
newsletter.
on. You're on Blue Sky, right? I think that's where I've been
Yeah.
following you the most, but I didn't know you were on Mastodon. I'll add you there. So yes, I'm trying to move as much as possible in terms of my time. As an author, we kind of need to be everywhere to be accessible.
Yeah.
But as
Yeah.
far as my investment of time, I'm moving more and more to Blue Sky and Mastodon because
Yeah.
they feel like healthier spaces right now, and more, and not just safer spaces, but more constructive and creative spaces. So
Yeah, it's still possible to have conversations there.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what is in your to read pile? What are you looking forward to diving into in the near future?
Oh, my to read pile is so long. And I'm always getting new books at the library or putting books on my stack. But the thing I'm most looking forward to reading I have a physical copy of it because I backed the Kickstarter, is Margaret Killjoy's latest book.
Mm.
Margaret Killjoy is a trans anarchist writer. She's an essayist, a fiction writer, an activist. She's amazing. And of course, I should have looked up the title of her latest book. I'm going to look it up right now.
Sure,
Or maybe you
absolutely.
could put it in the
Yes,
show
I
notes.
will. I will put that in the show notes.
So her latest book is called The Sapling Cage.
Okay.
And I'm really looking forward to reading that because I always appreciate her voice, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. And I really encourage people to follow her. Her newsletter is well worth reading.
And is the Sapling Cage fiction or essays or?
The Sapling Cage is fiction.
Okay, I will add that to
She
mine
also
too.
has books of essays. She has a few books out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent. And who would you recommend I have as a guest on this show?
Well, Margaret Killjoy would be great.
Yeah, that'd be very
And
cool.
I also recommend anti-fascist researcher Spencer Sunshine.
Oh,
Spencer Sunshine is doing really terrific work and has been for a long time. He's an academic and a researcher and an activist. He's done a lot of work with popular mobilization, writing zines about 20 ways to resist fascism in your town, that sort of thing. And he's just a terrific resource.
Yeah, absolutely. I will reach out. That's a good call. So before we get to our send off, there's some folks I need to thank. Thanks to the artist Max Oakland, who reached out and provided one of his songs for our intro song, his song "I Prefer the Dusk." Let Max know you like it by following him on Twitter at Max Oakland with 3Ds. And thanks to the author Stephen E. Scribner, who's the author of the Taun Fantasy series, but who makes music under the name S. Eric Scribner. He donated the song "A Poem" from his album Pianosphere for our use during the ad break. If you make music and you'd like your song used on the show, I'd love to highlight a listener's work like Max's or Steven's song. So email me about that. Thanks to Doug, the producer, for making this show sound good and taking the blame when it doesn't. And I cannot forget to mention, Writers Not Writing is a production of NotAPipe Publishing. So please go to NotAPipePublishing.com and check out the amazing books written by authors who didn't procrastinate too much. If you like this show, rate it and review it wherever you found it. Check out Thorn. What's your newest book? Is it the detective series or is it the witches?
The newest book is Pride Street, the Corgi Detectives in a Queer Little Village. So if you like cozy mysteries, it's great. And it's got an AIDS activist leather daddy ghost that's a paranormal element, and the corgis solve the crimes. So if you want a break that is also uplifting, queer and community building, the Pride Street series. And then coming up for pre-order will be my essay collection, Resistance Matters. So folks will be able to pre-order that everywhere very soon.
Oh, excellent. Yes, I will be keeping an eye out for that. And folks, when those come, when Resistance Matters comes out, when you check that out, when you're finished with the Corgi series, please give it that 5th star and write a nice review. It makes a big difference. It helps other people find the work. And similarly for this show, if you could click on the thumbs up an odd number of times, that would be really appreciated. Thorn and I have a couple of things we want you to remember this week. The thing I always tell everybody is all writing is political, speaking is political, and not writing or speaking is also political because silence maintains the status quo. So use your voice to make the world a better place. And Thorn, how about you? What's your advice for everybody this week?
Don't give up.
Yeah.
We need you.
Here's a tiny bit of our bonus segment just for supporters of the Patreon.
Yeah, and then that's also how our readers find us, right? Mm-hmm. If what's important to me is something that resonates with you, then you're going to find my books. I mean, I have readers who read everything I write cross genre. They don't care if it's cozy mystery, if it's urban fantasy, epic fantasy. They just want the vision I'm putting out because their concerns are my concerns and their hope is my hope, right? And yeah. It's the same for any author and reader. You know, as a reader, I connect with certain writers, and some of them I only read one of their series. Others of them I read everything. So we find each other through art too. We find each other through what's important to us.
Oh, yes.